and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. This podcast is sponsored by our good friends at Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software made just for Australian freelancers and sole traders. It's everything you need to make freelancing easier. Find out more at rounded.com.au.
Also, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, Rounded is giving you 20% off an annual subscription plan. Upgrade to gold membership for all the details.
Hi Rach, how are you?
I'm good. I'm pretty busy, relying a lot on my to-do list these days because after that very quiet month last month, we've come out into this massive month where everybody wants everything. So it's quite hectic.
Yesterday,
Yeah.
yes.
How about you?
Me, I've been busy and I've been from one side of the country to the other in the past week and juggling client work with seeing my gorgeous granddaughter in Perth, which is just lovely to work as a freelancer and be able to take your computer, work anywhere. And I think that's really good. But I'm definitely trying to keep on track now.
I think I said to you, I was very envious that you had that 5-hour plane journey.
Yeah, exactly.
To Perth, because I always get a lot done.
I finished 2 stories. I felt really virtuous, so that was really good. Yeah. But our guest today is somebody that I think you've known for years, haven't you? Kerri Sackville.
Yes. We actually were both part of the blogging world years ago when I was doing Reality Chick and Kerri was doing Life and Other Crises. But she's gone on to so many great things, including writing columns for some of the country's most well-known mastheads, and she's a published author 5 times over, plus being in a number of anthologies. So I'm stoked to have her on. I'll just read out a quick bio and then we'll get her in the hot seat.
Okay.
Kerri Sackville is an Australian author, columnist, and social commentator. Her work has appeared extensively in online and print publications, and she's a regular columnist for the Sydney Morning Herald, the Melbourne Age, Brisbane Times, and Sunday Life magazine. Over the years, Kerri's appeared frequently on commercial and ABC radio networks, podcasts, and TV shows including Sunrise, The Morning Show, and Studio 10. She's also the author of 5 books, including her latest, The Secret Life of You, How a Bit of Alone Time Can Change Your Life, Relationships, and Maybe the World. And her other books include The Life-Changing Magic of a Little Bit of Mess Out There, a survival guide for dating in midlife, The Little Book of Anxiety, Confessions from a Worried Life, and When My Husband Does the Dishes, a memoir of marriage and motherhood.
Gosh.
Kerri lives in Sydney's eastern suburbs with her kids and a recalcitrant cat. Did I say that word right?
Yeah.
And enjoys lying very still on the couch. I quite enjoy lying very still on the couch. It never happens. Welcome, Kerri. Oh my gosh.
It's so nice to be with you guys. It really is. And yeah, Rach, we go back a long way. Yes, we've had some fun times together.
We've had some fun times. The eHarmony day that will go unmentioned, and
making an ad basically that never got aired, probably because we behaved so badly on set.
We did,
but we will skip over that.
Yes. Oh God, those were the days.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about yourself, Kerri, because you've had a bit of a stop-start career with writing. Is that right?
Yeah, I have. So I started off at university studying English and linguistics, and I guess I wanted to be a writer, but I kind of panicked and decided that it was not vocational enough and that I'd never make a go of it. And I changed course, and for reasons that are still a bit unclear to me, I ended up doing social work, worked as a social worker for a few years. I'm not sure I was great at it. It was certainly fascinating to be, around people and study psychology and all the things involved in social work. But I ended up pivoting to human resources and recruitment. And then I had my first child and I went back to uni after he was born and I finished my English degree. So I finished my BA, and that was just, I guess, put me back into the headspace of writing, which I'd always loved doing. And then after my second child was born, a couple of years later, I sent out a column to Heckler, which was then the backspace of the Sydney Morning Herald, and I think the Age as well. And it was a 750-word column space that was open to the public, and I literally sent out a column unsolicited, and it was published, and I had several hecklers published, and from there my career grew, and I was asked to write for a couple of local papers, and I started writing a book, and then I was pregnant with my third child when my sister died, so that would have been 15 years ago now, and I had shocking writer's block. I mean, I completely stopped writing for 18 months, didn't write a word, let all my columns go, let the idea of the book go. And I genuinely thought I would never write again. And then would have been 2009, I read about this new fandangled social media site called Twitter. And I started tweeting, and Twitter back then was 140 characters, a hard limit. And it was a real creative challenge just to write funny, pithy, witty tweets in 140 characters. And that's really how my career got started again. I started tweeting. My tweets were noticed by some people. They asked if I had a blog. I didn't really know what a blog was, but I thought, look, why not? So I gave blogging a go, and my blog got some attention. And from there, everything else happened. That's how I started writing a book. I got a literary agent, I started writing columns, and my whole career literally started from Twitter, which makes it really sad that I've recently gone off Twitter because of what's going on. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk. I'm not a fan of his kind of libertarian view of social media. I really worry about social media and all the anonymity and all the trolling and abuse. And I think social media should have a lot more restrictions, checks and balances that it does. And so I guess I had to walk the talk, and I left Twitter, and honestly I haven't really missed it that much. But I'm still on Facebook and Instagram if anybody wants to contact me. I like them.
Wow.
So you didn't move over to Mastodon or anything like that?
I didn't. It was such a time suck anyway. I found, and particularly in the light of my recent book where I talk, it's about the importance of solitude. And I talk a lot about social media and how social media is connectivity and not real connection. And you can spend a huge amount of time and energy on these sites. And I would spend hours being engaged in discussions and often arguments with complete strangers. And it felt incredibly important to me at the time. And then you step away and think, what was I doing? Like I could actually be connecting with people in my life and getting those real feelings of connection, the kind of feelings of connection that sustain you in the rest of your life. Whereas social media, it's connectivity, but it's not actual real connection. And it doesn't, once you shut down, those feelings don't sustain you. They don't nurture you. A like and a comment is not the same as affection or real communion with people. So that's a whole other story. But yes, I don't actually miss it, is the short story.
I definitely agree with you. I think that it's such a skill being able to dip in and out and not let it consume you or have that time suckage thing like effect on your life. It's so true. But yes, your books are so funny, and I'm not at all surprised at that because I used to religiously read your blog back in the day. And it's true, isn't it? Memoir writing is really where you shine, and that was so evident in your blog. And you've talked about how you've gone back and forth, but was that sort of a straightforward realization for you, or was it like, your career line of massive scribbles to kind of get to that bit where you went, hang on, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm good at. I think
that's really interesting because when I look back, it seems like my career has had a real linear progression from one point logically to the next. I started off writing columns for Heckler and small publications. Then I became a blogger, and it was all nonfiction. And then I wrote my nonfiction books, and I eventually became a regular columnist. But at the time, there was honestly no plan. There was no kind of great overarching ambition. I really was, I think, quite reactive. I think I was just seeing opportunities and taking them. I mean, really, when I started on Twitter just to connect with celebrities. I got really excited about the idea of being able to talk to celebrities. And then I was asked if I was interested in blogging. A few people were saying, do you have a blog? We really like your tweets. So I thought, oh, why not? And then I was actually asked to write a guest post for Mamma Mia, which at the time was just a tiny personal blog. And I think I was the first person to write a post for Mamma Mia. And then it kind of went from there. And then as the blog got more attention, I started writing elsewhere. I, had an idea for a book, wrote the book, and I really never kind of looked ahead to the next step. I just kept, taking opportunities when they came. I did try fiction writing though, briefly. I actually wrote a couple of novels that I showed my agent, and she was very nice about them, and was basically like, yeah, this is great for a non-fiction writer. Like,
Oh.
you know, my novels were such thinly disguised non-fiction.
Was.
You know, it was really just, I feel like I'm very good at.
So the person wasn't called Kerri, she was called
She was Terry, you know, Terry Mackville, you know. But I think my skill lies in observing what's going on around me, or having opinions and ideas. I'm hopeless at making things up, and I just so admire people who can and read novels where there are plot twists and these you know, really complex characters. I have no idea how they do it.
Yeah, how they bring all those threads together. We've had some fiction authors on recently, including Emma Gray, who's on this
amazing
last week. And
Yeah.
how do they bring all those threads together? I'm with you. I think
very, very different skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your blog, Life and Other Crises, was it all? So it's not really a strategy, but did you just use it to blow off steam, or did you find that quite a cathartic process?
Yeah, I mean, I started, as I said, I started blogging really because people were saying, we love your tweets, you know, can we see more of your writing? And I thought, why not?
Yeah.
And it became such an enjoyable thing to do. I never found it, I never let it get to the stage where it was a chore. There was always something to write about. It was really cathartic at the time. I was writing a lot of observational stuff about marriage and motherhood. You know, at the time I was a parent of 3 young kids. And I loved, I guess, something that I hadn't had previously, you know, when I'd been writing for Heckler and parenting magazines and you know, community newspapers before. What the blog gave me was that immediate feedback, and it was so exciting to sort of write something and see the comments.
Yeah.
And you know, the audience is self-selecting. It's very different now writing columns for, you know, major newspaper, when it's going out to people who don't necessarily get my humor or my backstory. So there weren't the same sort of challenges. I was writing for people who chose to follow me. And it was a great experience, but the only reason I stopped really was because I had I had paid work, and my column ideas were going towards paid work rather than just putting them on my blog. But it was a terrific way to start.
So it was the golden age of blogging really then too, wasn't it?
It really wasn't something that I often think about. I don't know if you've read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, but it's all about how in any success there is a big element of luck. You know, you can have talent, you can have drive, but there's also a lot of being in the right place at the right time. And I started on Twitter at a time when it was very easy to get noticed. There weren't very many of us. So that's how someone like Mia Friedman noticed my tweets and you know, had me on Mamma Mia, which is really where I got my start. And then I started blogging in that golden age of blogging where there weren't many of us. We all knew each other. We all came together for blogging conferences. It was an incredibly supportive and nurturing environment. And now, you know, a decade or decade and a half later, I mean, the blogging kind of reached its peak where pretty much every woman and her cat had a blog. And now it's kind of died down again. And I think that's probably because of everything is more visual now. And so TikTok and Instagram Reels and everything is taken off. But it was a time when I could get noticed. And even a few years after I started, it was much harder for talented people to get noticed. You know, I had a literary agent approach me. She'd read my blog and heard on Twitter that I was writing a book. That really doesn't happen very often now. You know, it was an incredible stroke of luck. And so I'm very appreciative that I was, you know, doing what I did at the right time.
I know that, you know, the holy grail for so many journos is opinion writing, getting to write columns. Are you at the stage now where you could sort of pitch a one-liner topic and have it picked up, or do you still get knocked back a fair bit?
Oh, God. I love having my column. I have to say, I'm so appreciative. I feel grateful every time, and every single time I have something published, which is usually once a week, occasionally more. Every single time I'm sure it's the last time I'll ever write anything. Like, I'm sure, you know, it was a fluke. I'm at the point now, I have a great relationship with my current editor who's editing the opinion section and the Sunday Life editor. And I'm definitely at the stage with them where I'll flick them a one-liner and say, I want to write about this. Occasionally I do get knocked back. Like, I had an idea yesterday that I pitched to the editor, and he was like, oh, you know, I'm not sure that's what I want right now. Or sometimes they'll say, look, we're about to run something that's similar. And he'll say, what else have you got? I don't have to, you know, kind of pitch something and then wait like I used to wait for days, if not weeks, for someone to pick up my email. That's fantastic. But yeah, you've got to understand, over the years, I've had a number of different editors, and they don't all love me. You know, I had a long period with the editor who actually suggested me for one of the columnist roles at Sunday Life. And, you know, it was, for me, that was my golden age. And then she left, and I had an editor who really didn't understand. Oh, when I say don't understand, that sounds a bit patronizing. I guess my kind of writing was not what she didn't match her vision for the paper at the time. And I got very little work, and it was really difficult. And there were a few of us who were writing at the time, and most of the others dropped off. And you could say I'm persistent, but also I'm really bad at networking, and I didn't have a lot of other avenues, so I just kind of hung in there. And eventually, you know, another editor came in who loved my work, but you're always very aware that it could stop at any moment. You know, this editor could leave, and I could have somebody else who has a different vision, or who just doesn't like me. And so I really do feel grateful every time I have a column, and prepare myself that it could come to an end at any moment.
Yeah. Do you still remember the first column you wrote? Is it a fond memory?
God, yes. So the first column I ever wrote, the one I sent to Heckler, was called Sleep is the New Sex. And it was about how new mothers crave sleep like we used to crave sex. And it was,
I remember that.
Yeah, full of puns like, you know, I was up and down all night, and I had such a good one. I was really proud of that.
Yeah.
Classic. What do you think are the trickiest columns to write, and do you have any rules when it comes to what you will and won't write about? Like, do you have a permissions document if you're going to use someone?
So probably for me, the easier ones are ones that are straight opinion pieces that don't involve any of my personal life. It's when you talk about tricky ones, it's the ones where I'm writing about myself or experiences that I've had in my relationships. And I do a lot of that. I mean, I write personal reflections, but it's really difficult to find that balance of wanting to tell a story that's authentic without compromising the people in my life. And I'm really, really clear on what I will and will not say. And, you know, as you guys know, I mean, coming from the blogging world, where for a lot of people there's no holds barred, and people would write everything about their partners and their kids with photos and with details. I don't do that. I try and kind of write in broader brushstrokes that explain, I guess, the reality of an experience without giving specifics. So I've never ever used my kids' names or my ex-husband's name or my current partner's name. Certainly never post photos, not even on my personal Facebook page. You know, I don't write about their particular challenges or issues. But, yeah, sometimes I want to talk about an experience. So I wrote a piece recently which was about finding love in midlife. And I wanted to do that in a way that really was authentic and real, but without giving too much away about my partner, because he didn't sign up to be written about.
I read that one, actually. Yeah.
Well, that went well, because people like to hear a happy story. So those kind of ones are tricky. And anytime I mention my partner, I mean, I tend to show my stuff anyway before it's published, but always the people in my life, I've always shown them. Occasionally, if I'm writing about, you know, when I was on the dating scene, I was writing about men, I would change their identities. I wouldn't use names. You know, I'm very vague when I'm talking about issues in friendship, but it's always a fine line. And there was recently a column that I wanted to write about something one of my daughters says a lot. You know, I want to write about how I hate the phrase "I'll do it later." Like, it just dements me. You know, when you ask your teenager to do something, I'll do it later. And I tried to write it, but I realized I couldn't write it without giving specific examples. And I had to scrap it because I couldn't do it in a way that wouldn't compromise her. So there are some really good stories that you just can't tell, unfortunately. But that's the line I draw.
I think when I was younger, I didn't consider that all the reality chick stuff I was doing was going to end up in a dating book that I wrote with Pip Harry. And I haven't gone back and read that, and I know I would be cringing and screaming reading it.
Yeah.
So what about you? Have you ever regretted a column that's been published, or have you regretted putting something in a book that you read later and went, oh, shit, why did I put that in?
Actually, yeah, look, I've got two examples. One is a column that I wrote. I don't even want to say what it was because I don't want people looking it up. But all I'll say is that it was a new editor, and they asked me to write something. It was many years ago. It was not my area of expertise, but I didn't want to turn down the first commission from a new editor.
Yeah.
So I wrote it. I don't think I knew what I was talking about, and I got absolutely slammed. And I regretted it ever since. It was, I can't even, like, I really cringed thinking about it. I'm not going to tell you what it was.
Yeah.
But then there was a chapter I wrote in an anthology that I was commissioned to write. and it was about a relationship that I'd had. And people can look this one up. And I had an amazing editor who really, really, really pushed me. And she made me rewrite it like 3 or 4 times. And every time just got more and more and more out of me, to the point where it's probably the most personal thing I've ever written. And I read it and I think it's a good piece of writing. It certainly conveys the truth and the pain and the heartache of what happened. But it's so vulnerable. And I'm not used to that. I'm not used to having people push me like that. So that was an experience. Probably if I could take it back, I probably would. It's out there now and I just have to live with it. But yeah, it was I even thinking about it
beyond your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's so far beyond my comfort zone. That just shows what a great editor can do. You know, who
great
wants them?
editor with no boundaries.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess one of the things I wonder, because your columns are so personal and they're about your life and autobiographical, people might feel that they know you. Do you find that people, you know, if they meet you or they email you, do they feel like they know you?
Yeah, that dating guy who Googled you and you turned up on the first date and he'd read all your stuff.
God, that happened a few times. That was awful. That was actually probably the most difficult time in terms of the fallout from what I do, because when I started writing and when I started, you know, personal writing, I was married and I never ever imagined that I would then be singled on the dating scene and having to deal with having this body of work and honestly, I can't give you a percentage, but definitely more than half, probably more like 3/4 of men who I would go on dates with would turn up having done a deep dive. And it really made it imbalanced. Like I would be sitting there opposite a complete stranger and they would feel they knew everything about me. And it was so hard.
Yeah.
But the only other way that impacts me, I mean, yes, I'll sometimes run into someone who I don't know at all or who I barely know, and they'll be much more familiar with me than I am with them. And it's strange, but it's also so nice and flattering to know that someone reads your work. So I'm absolutely fine with that. But something that I get a lot, which I find really confusing, I'm not quite sure how to deal with it, is that I have people, you know, complete randoms on the internet who do feel like they know me and who will write to me and tell me their personal stories because they've read mine. And sometimes people write a lot and you'll get repeated messages. I'll get repeated messages from the same people and I never know how to respond, because on the one hand, I don't want to, you know, have a long message from someone telling me something really personal and vulnerable and just give it a little, you know, just press the heart.
Yes.
On the other hand, I don't want to respond in too great a detail because I don't have, I guess, the time or the emotional energy or
the professional training.
The professional training to really engage and be someone's counselor. So I think probably most people, you know, online who are visible like that would have that. And I actually don't really know how to deal with it. And it can be quite confusing, especially when people ask you for advice or you know, just tell you their stories. And it's tricky. It's very strange. I try to handle it sensitively, but you know, there are probably people who feel a bit unhappy that I haven't given more and engaged more.
You kind of have to have boundaries, don't you? Otherwise, you'd be encouraging that person to keep writing back, and it becomes this thing where they feel like they've created a relationship with you. And, you know, it's really tricky to navigate that. I think
it is.
Yeah. Wasn't Emma Gray telling us about that? But she's got a different situation. She's got people telling her stories about, you know, grief-stricken stories about people that
absolutely.
Lost. It's about how
a lot of writers who've had something traumatic that they've turned into fiction or something do get those personal stories. And I guess you sharing personal stuff, that sort of, some people feel that opens the door without seeing those proper boundaries. Yeah,
definitely. And when I wrote, I used to write much more than I do now about, you know, my sister's death, and I would have a lot of people write to me with similar stories. But obviously writing about dating, you get so many people writing to you and telling you what they're going through, and a lot of men, you know, writing and sharing their stories. And sometimes it's you know, positive ways, sometimes it's horror stories, sometimes they just want to tell me that they're good men, and you know, it's
not all men.
Exactly, hashtag not all men. And it's tricky because I always feel like I want to acknowledge everybody who takes the time to write to me, because you know, I've written to people whose writing I really like, and it's so nice if you write like a bit of a fan letter or a message saying, oh wow, that was great, to hear back. And it's always a bit crushing when you send somebody, a message saying I love your work and they don't respond. And that happens, to me, not irregularly. I think there's one I could think of recently. I read her book and messaged saying, God, that was wonderful, well done, and never heard back. So I try and respond, but then, you've kind of got to, again, draw a line where it's getting into this long dialogue. And I feel sad. There are some people who are clearly really lonely and who don't have people to talk to, and they're reaching out to strangers on the internet. And that's sad. It's upsetting.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit, because we've covered a little bit about your columns. I want to talk a little bit about your books and, how that started. You've talked a bit about how the agent reached out to you. Is that how your first book deal came about? Or
So I decided to write a book about marriage and motherhood, because I'd been blogging a lot about it, and I had told a few people, and I think someone had, I know, you know who it was? It was Alison Tate, Al Tate, who I'd met through the blogging world. She'd seen on Twitter that I'd mentioned that I was writing a book, and she contacted her agent. And then I got an email from the agent saying,
wow,
I really like your blog. I hear that you're writing a book. Are you interested in representation? And at the time I was kind of breezily, oh yeah, that'd be great. I really didn't understand. I was completely new to the publishing world. I didn't understand, how lucky I was and how hard people work to get an agent. So in hindsight, I wish I'd been a little bit, more, I was very grateful, obviously, but I should have been kissing her feet. It was amazing. Like, that was such a stroke of luck. And she's been my agent the whole time. And so she's sold all of my books for me. And a very comforting presence, because being a writer can be absolutely awful, and the insecurity and the fear and, oh God, what are people going to think, and is it going to sell? And just having an agent has made it so much better. She's like a combination of kind of salesperson for my book and advocate and therapist.
I suppose also they become like that buffer between you and the publisher, don't they? So they can couch things in a nice way if there's bad news. And does it make it easier getting a book deal if you have an agent?
Oh, I'm sure, because as I said, I'm not a great networker. I think I would have found it really hard to be sending my manuscript around, and the only person I have to send it to is her. So I send it to Pippa, and she then does the rest and comes back to me and says, right, here's, we've got this offer, or we've got these offers. Honestly, I take my hat off to people who do all that hard work themselves. On the other hand, I suppose they then get to, keep all the proceeds with no commission. But I'm very happy paying my commission, because it's been absolutely worth it for me.
So which of your books have been the most popular and got the most feedback, good and bad?
It's hard to say. Remember when I wrote my first couple of books, social media was still pretty new. There was Twitter, but I didn't even have a Facebook page until my first book was released. And that was because the publisher asked me to. And I think I just had a personal Facebook page. I didn't have a public one. We didn't even have Instagram then. So it was much harder for people to reach out and contact me. The dating book and the mess book, which were, more recently, it felt like, I'm sure it wasn't, but almost every time somebody read it, they would reach out and tell me they really enjoyed it or post about it. So I got much more feedback with the more recent books. I don't think they necessarily sold more than the first couple, but I certainly got a lot more feedback, which is really nice. And when I write a column that people don't like, people will, leave comments on the Herald's page or whatever. Happily for me, if people have read the books and haven't liked it, they don't reach out. I don't really get emails saying that book was shit. I tend to only get emails saying, thank you so much, I loved that book, you made me laugh, this, the dating book really helped me. So luckily in that respect, which is very different to column writing, that the feedback is generally positive, which is really nice. That's what you want.
I actually read your meth book when I was overseas, and I would just scurry away for the afternoon and have these little afternoon things, reading it and laughing in my room. And it was so great. You're never going to cure me of needing a clean house before I start work, ever.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. That's really, it's hard living with extreme neatness. So, my heart goes out to you at this difficult time in your life.
Tell us what prompted the latest book, what it's about, and why you wanted to write it.
Oh, I'm so excited. This has been my passion project. 2020 was not a great year for me. The media took a big hit, with COVID lockdowns, because, they lost advertising, and I lost a lot of my work, not because I had a hostile editor, but just because there wasn't much work to be had. The budgets were slashed. And, all the coping strategies that I had used before weren't available to me because, we were in lockdown. I was stuck at home with 3 kids, 2 of whom were really unhappy. My youngest at the time was, doing online school, and she was loving it. I think the kids cope quite well, but my big kids, who were both at uni, were stuck at home, really miserable. I didn't have much work. I couldn't date, and I realized I had been dating a lot and using almost dating as a way to kind of escape what it meant to be single. There was always, I was always swiping. There was always someone on the go. There was always some interest. And I was spending a lot of time on social media. And I realized that I guess I was running from myself.
Yeah.
I was avoiding actually sitting with myself and processing what was happening and just learning to be with me and learning to be alone. And so I stopped swiping. I took myself off social media for long periods of time, and I kind of resolved to just learn to sit with my thoughts. And it was genuinely transformative. I'm not a spiritual person, but learning to sit with myself, to comfort myself, to turn to myself before I turn to other people, to get to know myself like I would get to know a friend, genuinely transformed my life. And I started researching all the benefits of solitude. And I learned that, solitude is absolutely vital for creativity, which any creative person knows, but also for resilience, for self-awareness, for the development of moral courage, which is really important. And there are reasons why, people who get caught up in conspiracy theories or who are radicalized tend not to ever sit back and contemplate what they're doing and what they're believing. It's incredibly important for our relationships. So when you're not prepared to ever be on your own, you tend to use other people to fill you up instead of filling yourself up. And that creates really unhealthy dynamics where you're not able to advocate for yourself in a relationship, for example, in a romantic relationship, if you're never prepared to walk away because of fear of being alone. There's just a myriad of reasons why alone time is so important. And I looked at why so many of us struggle to be alone with our thoughts. And of course, a big part of that is social media. It's not the only part, but a big part of that. Social media is designed to be addictive. And so I wrote a book which is in 3 parts. It talks about what alone time is and all of the benefits of alone time. It talks about why so many of us struggle to be alone with our thoughts. And then it actually takes you through step by step on how to become comfortable sitting with your thoughts for short periods of time. And I feel really passionately about it. I especially look to, to people who are caught up with, young people or people of my age who used to have time alone with our thoughts when we were younger because we didn't have alternatives when we were in a queue or when we were in our bedrooms or when we're out walking. But now so many of us never have to be alone with our thoughts, so we never are. And there are real consequences to that. So I've written The Secret Life of You, how a bit of alone time can change your life, relationships, and maybe the world. And I'm really excited about sharing this book. It's something that, I've written a lot of humor, and this book does have humor and a lot of personal stories, but I feel it's really important, especially at this point in our history, to get us back to learning to be with ourselves.
Is it out now? Or
it's out April 4th. You can pre-order it, but it is officially out April 4th.
I think it's definitely a skill we all need to learn, because you can just, as you say, you fill your cup with all these other things, social media, other people, and you never actually go to yourself.
Yes.
Although I'm so guilty of that for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are the only people who will be with ourselves till the ends of our lives.
Yeah.
And a lot of people go through their lives frantically looking to everybody else and consuming content from other people and turning to other people for their opinions and their input. And if you don't ever sit and look at yourself and ask yourself what you want and how you want to live and what you think, you can actually never live fully and never really be the person you want to be. I mean, you can't be who you want to be until you know who that person is. And you can't ever feel loved for who you really are if you don't know who that person is. We need to, there's a great quote, in order to say I love you, we need to be able to say I. We need to know who that I is. So anyway, it's endless. I could talk about it for hours, but I will try not to.
Talk us through your writing process, because obviously you write books and you write columns. How do you work solely on one project at a time, or do you sort of juggle both at the same time and like a Tetris puzzle? How does it work?
Look, generally when I get an idea for a column, I need to sit down and write it. And I get very agitated if I have to move away before it's finished. If it's a easy one, or if it's one that's fully formed in my mind, it can take half an hour. Sometimes it can take a couple of hours. But once I get the idea, I really need to sit and do it. And, you know, my family and my partner know I'm a bit of a nightmare until I can get it out. But with a book, you obviously can't do that. You can't sit down and work solidly for 6 months. So with the books, I tend to, you know, write when I can, write when I have space. I'm very good at, because I started writing when the kids were all so little, I'm very good at shutting out the world and kind of sitting at my kitchen table and writing. I often just put in earplugs and use white noise. But I don't have any solid writing routine. I'd love to be inspirational and say, oh yeah, I get up at 5 a.m. and do 2 hours of writing. I don't. I literally will write when I have a moment, and I'm, you know, flexible about that. But if there's something I really want to finish, then I can also be, you know, sitting at my desk writing at 9 o'clock at night or you know, 8 o'clock when I should be kind of with other people. So swings and roundabouts.
Yeah. The curse of any writer, really.
Yes.
When you're into something, you know, you're in the flow, I suppose.
Oh, yeah. And like my partner came over last night and I was in the middle of a column and I was just useless company because all I could do was think about it. I'd say to him, oh, and do you think, you know, what about if I put this in there? And, you know, what fun for him. Lucky man. Wow.
So it's interesting. You talked a lot about opinion writing, particularly at the beginning. There's a lot of places that want opinion pieces. Do you think it's a great entree into writing and journalism? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I think it's a real skill to be able to write something, you know, with a word limit that conveys an idea, that connects with people. You know, it's certainly, it was a great platform for me to get noticed and to build my career. And there's really, you know, people ask sort of how do you write a good opinion piece? And I think the two things are, well, the first is you need a really, really strong opinion. And I think the when an opinion piece isn't working or when it's not great, it's because the person's trying to kind of play both sides or be balanced. What opinion editors are looking for a really strong opinion. So taking one side, and, you know, obviously if it's going to be contentious, that's great. They love that. But you don't write, you know, you've got to be authentic. You've got to write something that you genuinely believe. And it's pretty clear when you don't. But the stronger the opinion, the better. And then if you're trying to pitch things around, you know, pieces around the news cycle always work. Like they're always looking for pieces, you know, around the news cycle, around big stories to piggyback off, you know, things that have had a lot of traction. Opinion editors are always, well, all editors are looking for clicks. And so that's what I would recommend is strong opinions, and preferably around the news cycle.
So if you can see both sides and you can't really settle on one or the other, is that a topic you wouldn't touch because of that reason?
Yeah, no, I really wouldn't. Sometimes, you know, I'm in a really lucky position where sometimes an editor will contact me and say, you know, do you have an opinion about this? And often I do, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't feel very strongly about it, and I won't try. I know enough now. I used to try and manufacture an opinion, but it never worked, and I would usually end up giving up. Like you really can't. You've got to be authentic. And so I'll just say, look, I actually don't feel strongly about this particular issue. Having said that, when I write an opinion piece and I do have a strong opinion, I try always to embed the opposing argument in the body of the piece, because I'm trying to anticipate how people are going to argue with me. But that doesn't mean that I agree with both sides. It just means that I'm trying to ward off arguments.
The trolls.
Ward off the trolls. But also I think that's a good argument. You have to anticipate what the other person would say and then address that in the body of the piece.
Wow. Are you a techie person? What are your favourite tools and platforms? Are there some that have really helped you as a writer?
Oh, God, you're going to be so disappointed in me. I literally use Microsoft Word. I've tried using, I can never remember if it's Scrivener or Scrivener, whatever.
Scrivener, yeah.
Scrivener,
yeah.
I couldn't do it. My brain is just too, you know, like I'm too set in my ways. So I started typing really early. I started typing when I was 14, and I progressed from, you know, a regular manual typewriter to then an electric, and then to my first word processor. And now literally I just use Word. The only tools I use a lot are the online thesaurus. I love that. And there's a visual thesaurus that I really love. That all the words come out like a flower. I love that. And in recent times, I've been using ChatGTP as a thesaurus. That's what I find it's really good for, because sometimes you need the word in order to find the word. So
Yep.
say I'm trying to think of the word ambiguous and I can't think of anything so I'll put into ChatGPT, tell me some phrases that mean something can be two things at once, or it's not clear what it is, and it'll tell me. Like, it's just you can relate, you can interact with ChatGPT in a way that you can't interact with the thesaurus.
Yeah.
So that's how I use it, and that's really the extent of it. Oh, and I dictate into my voice memos on my iPhone. So if I'm out walking, which is where I get a lot of my ideas, I'll just dictate them in. So you'll see me madly walking around my neighborhood going, oh, and then if the person says this, and I probably look a bit mad, but and then I come back and I have to listen to my own voice, and it's really excruciating. But
try having a podcast. No, I don't actually listen back to the podcast ever.
I never listen back to any radio or podcast spots I do ever. It's just, and I've done 2 audiobooks and I can't listen to them either. It's just excruciating. So I hear you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's coming up for you this year? Have you got some press or some like a book tour for the new book, or are you already thinking about your next book?
I am definitely not thinking about my next book. I wrote 2 books in like a year and a half. Because I'd actually started writing the book about solitude and then was asked to write the mess book. So I had a really good 18 months, and that's it for a while. So I'll just be focusing on, promoting my next book. I'm really excited about it. But it's, it's always scary having a new book come out. It's true, you've heard people say this before, but it's like giving birth and then presenting your baby to the world. And some people say, oh my God, what a beautiful baby. And others are like, I'm not even going to look at it. And others going, oh yeah, it's all right. So it's you just have to do it because you love it and because you feel passionately about the project, and be happy with what you've done. I'm really happy with the book. I think it could change some lives, but I am also just really, really proud of what I did, for the intrinsic satisfaction of doing it. It's a really nice cover as well. Check out the cover. It's very pretty.
Oh, that's exciting. And is there a bit of a promotional tour? You're going to bookshops, the festivals, all that sort of stuff?
I hope so. It's still a month out, so I'm yet to see my schedule, but I really hope so. I know there's a couple of things on the agenda so far, so I'll hopefully have some things coming up, and obviously I'll post about them all.
Yes.
Amazing.
Wow.
Tell us where everyone can find you and find your books and that sort of thing.
Not on Twitter.
Yeah, we got that.
I am on Instagram at Kerri Sackville. There is a link in my profile to pre-order my new book. You can pre-order it at Booktopia, and I would absolutely love that. Pre-orders are really important. And I'm on Facebook at Kerri Sackville Online. I have a website, kerrisackville.com.au, which has some of my favorite columns and links to all of my books. And I have an authory page, which is basically all of my columns as they come up. And the link to my authory page is in my Instagram bio. And I would love to see everybody there.
Oh my God.
And I do answer all messages. I mean, maybe if you send me 10 messages telling me all about the problems in your life, I might kind of ease off. But I promise you, I answer all messages. I'm always really, really happy to hear from people.
Oh, that's
amazing.
Nice.
Oh my God, Kerri, it's been so great having you on, especially after following your career for so long and sort of, getting to meet all those years ago.
Yes. It has been great, and this was much more fun than doing the eHarmony commercial.
It was. I'm glad to hear that.
What I hear, that doesn't say much.
Yeah, true. We did have fun though.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been so fascinating. It's such an interesting career and quite different. I love the sort of linear, non-linear part of it, which is quite exciting, quite different. I think it's quite inspiring.
It is,
that's
definitely.
So nice.
Yeah. And don't forget, we'll have some show notes in the app, and so go to wherever you find your podcast, and we'll put all the links to where you can connect with Kerri and find her books.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I should say thanks again to our sponsors, rounded.com.au, because they're easy in accounting and invoicing software, and they're just made for Australian freelancers and sole traders. So go to rounded.com.au.
We'll see you all next week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.